Hey, this is John Bohlinger with Premier Guitar. So we've shot a lot of factory tours at PG, and usually we can condense them into one video. But we recently went to Santa Cruz, California, and met with Richard Hoover of Santa Cruz Guitars. And there was so much information there that we're going to break it down into a few manageable chunks. The first one is where Richard Hoover is talking about wood and about where he sources it, about how he pairs it, about finding the right Tonewoods, and how he's become this builder that is so well known amongst wood people that the wood now kind of finds him. And how Richard Hoover at Santa Cruz did a partnership with Stanford University, and it's all about determining the resonance and the proper use of tone woods. So Richard Hoover does what most luthiers do. They'll tap on wood, they'll listen to it, they'll find the sweet spot. But he's now combining this with these deep scientific analysis. It's almost like the Lorax. He's really an amazing character, and his guitars are incredible. And this is a fun factory tour to watch. So with no more further introduction, here is Santa Cruz Guitar Part 1. Hey, I am John Bohlinger with Premier Guitar, and we're at Santa Cruz Guitar Company with Richard Hoover, who founded the whole thing in 1976.
I think you have the second best job in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah, what you do, right?
Mine's and you've got the first best
right.
job, right. Yeah, you know, it's so great to be here. When I've got a theory. When we were driving here from San Francisco.
Oh, nice day to do that.
Oh, God, it was so beautiful. And all the wood, and you just grew up around wood. Mm-hmm. Like you grew up in a place where you could actually drive through a tree. Yeah. So how could you not?
In a less enlightened day,
yeah, right.
Cut tunnels through trees for automobiles.
Yeah, but I think that environment had to sort of.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. I think I had my first, real. I'm being careful of my words here, but my first really profound spiritual discovery in the Redwoods as a really little kid.
Sure.
And of course, those things you can't put into words. It was just a realization of how everything fell into place, where I belonged. And of course, that only lasts about 8 seconds. It goes away, and you spend your whole life trying to get there again, and
right.
again and again. But I have such a reverence for the, for the trees. I can actually look at a redwood tree and not think about it like a cow with dotted lines on it, for making guitar parts. And I love the environment, and that's why everything we use is, I'm going to use the term, responsibly harvested. That means reclaimed, coming from an old source. There's many advantages to old wood, but the idea of not having to cut a tree to get our guitars is not a marketing thing. It's just what we do.
Yeah. It's not only is it just great for the world, but you can hear it. I mean, you said something in an earlier interview that I watched that made so much sense. You were talking about how every bit of the instrument is tuned. That's right. By ear. And you said some builders, it's sort of like, this is paraphrasing, you said it's kind of like throwing rocks or a piano. You will arbitrarily hit some notes, but the likelihood of it being,
sure,
it could be a cacophony or it could be a chord.
And not the least bit dismissive. I love cheap guitars.
Oh yeah.
Cheap guitars, that's how we learn to make music and make the world a better place.
Sure.
And to get to that price level, you can't fuss around.
With
the secrets of Stradivarius, you just make a good guitar for the price. But again, driven by price, there's only so much you can do.
Sure.
And the true secret of Stradivarius and the School of Modal was they assembled their instruments of frequencies rather than dimensions, and you get like the results of a chord rather than random notes, which is sustain, overtones, the stuff that makes it good.
Yeah.
And I don't mind talking about that at all, because it's not like a trade secret. Somebody's going to take from us. Other companies can't do it, or they below their price targets.
Sure,
right?
sure.
With that, and I'll show you how to do that if you want.
Yes,
Yeah.
actually, I would. Yeah, I would. I'd love to see that.
We can go ahead and ask questions and talk about wood.
Yeah.
Which is I have a bit of a wood problem.
Yeah.
Right. So you'll have to stop me, or we'll spend all day in here.
Okay, so before we get into the specifics, right now we're in the wood room, and you personally source all the wood. It's got to be like hunting, right? I mean,
It's it's one of my joys. We deal with mostly families, small things where people have been in it for generations, and they want to keep it that way, so they care as much about their environment and the resources as we do. And the idea here is we're getting old wood that sounds better, looks better, it's denser. The resins in the wood have polymerized, which make it more resonant over time, which, by the way, a little myth busting, is the biggest reason that old guitars and violins or a board on a shelf sounds better with age, because the resins become, I wish I could say crystallized, it's sexy, but it's not. It's like glue drying, it's polymerization. So dealing with these families, I'm going to give you an instance. This Rosewood from India comes from the Yogi family. Beautiful people that have been doing this for 500 years.
Wow.
And I'm in the third generation working with them, and they only cut from trees that are downed or dead standing, lightning, windfall, old age. And again, the advantage of it, the big advantage is we're doing the right thing. We're not cutting a tree to get it. The selfish part is we get better wood. Again, it goes
Win-win.
slower, it's denser, it's more resonant, and it's a great story.
God, so
Yeah.
so you literally were in the 70s working with the grandparents, then their children know their grandchildren.
Yeah, the patriarch, Mr. Yogi. What a beautiful man.
That is
He was a photographer, took pictures of nature all over the world, really truly loved nature. And that's the kind of people we like dealing with.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
That share our vision, our cause, really. And we talked about this when we're off camera, but guitar making is the coolest thing in the world, but it's the vehicle for what we really do.
Yeah.
Sourcing the wood when I was younger, I had to go there, which was a delight, and I'm
Sure.
lucky enough to be able to do it. Now, good or bad, our relationships are so strong that I don't have to.
Yeah.
We can. I can call somebody on their BlackBerry in Mumbai and make the deal. This wood over here, we have different spruces, and I'll go into why we have different spruces in a minute. But that stack second from your right is like German spruce. It's probably almost 200 years old. It's been
Wow.
through 4 different builders, and we ended up with it, and it's just a delight to work with.
Okay, so if it's that, how long ago do you think it was harvested? How long did it go if it was?
I think that probably 150 years ago.
Wow.
Yeah, and again, the beautiful thing with this, the family, the Florinets in Burgund, Switzerland, have also been in it for 500 years, right? And they want to be in another 500 years, so they don't clear cut. They cut one tree at a time. They're the ones that do the legendary moon spruce, right?
Wow.
Which you may have heard of. Our business is based on paying forward, and our bank account is goodwill. And it's the personal relationships that allow us to get the good stuff, cooperate with other people, and that's why this collection of wood, that's what it all has in common, is it's responsibly harvested, it comes from the right people, and it sounds great, and looks good.
Golly.
Yeah.
And don't you think that kind of good karma and goodwill just kind of works its way into the instrument, and
I do.
I do too.
I do. I really do.
Yeah, I believe in that stuff.
Now, just because we can go in a little bit if you like. We have the most sophisticated modal analysis for analyzing wood and its properties in the world, and it does what I learned to do from the violin tradition of handling a piece of wood and determining what it's best for. Not the best piece of wood for a guitar, but the best piece of wood for this guitar for this customer. And the properties we're looking for is the clarity, scale of clarity. If you're playing bluegrass, traditional bluegrass, it's like a warmer blended sound. If you're playing jazz, classical, you'd want more clear and articulate. How quickly it responds, and its propensity for developing bass or treble frequencies. And you can do all that by doing this. And even when I pull it off the shelf, I can hear its level of clarity. And we can measure all this now to the point we can capture it and decide what this wood is best for and how to work it. That is so hard to teach that that was my career goal, to put it into a scientific vocabulary and then develop the mechanisms to measure it.
Right.
And that's not guitar making stuff. Yeah, that's grown-up science, right?
Yeah. Well, and didn't in the early days, didn't your mother give you a book on violin making?
Oh, geez. Well, thanks for that. So I'm sitting on the curb playing the guitar that I learned how to play to impress my girlfriend. By the way,
As we do.
Yeah, right. We all did, yeah.
Yeah.
By the way, I learned to play from a book by Happy and Artie Traum on finger picking. And I went into the newsstand, and there was a book with a picture of Mississippi John Hurt on the cover.
Sure.
And I went, how do grown-ups know about Mississippi John Hurt? And but Happy just passed away. And a beautiful, he's the one that had homespun tapes.
Sure, yeah,
and, played for everybody. But
yeah, I had one of his books, one of his early,
great.
the bluegrass, tutorial.
That's great. So I wanted to get that in, a tribute, because he's my hero. It was a really beautiful thing.
So great.
back to this wood choice. When we're making a guitar for somebody, we're really creating a recipe to get exactly what they want. Now, as we just talked about, everybody wants it to sound great. Sustained, rich, full, colorful overtones, and I'll show you how we do that. But the second thing is anything you can adjust on your sound system with knobs and sliders is a personal choice. If there was a right or wrong, you wouldn't get knobs or sliders,
sure.
Right? You get a box with presets. So EQ, presence, tone, all of those things are something that you can control in building a guitar. So starting with wood, this one that we had here is a spruce from the Italian-Swiss border, where the School of Modal, Stradivarius and those guys got their spruce. And this is nice, bright, clear, articulate.
Sure.
And this piece of Sitka spruce here is warmer.
Wow.
No less resonant, but warmer, a little more blended, and depending on what style you play, one would be the best piece of wood, right?
Huh.
Yeah, it's very cool.
It's really interesting to hear
And
that
this,
very real difference.
This is the data that we collect with our modal analysis. And it's everything a violin maker would do with the tradition that goes back millennia in evaluating a piece of wood for what it's best for. In the violins have a standard that they're all supposed to sound the same. Not with guitars, because we play different music. So the idea with that, both for sides and back, is that scale of clarity that we do. So again, I got to be careful about wood stories here. I'll really get cranky. But this is fun stuff. I love redwood. But redwood is, we know from our modal analysis that of all of the Tonewoods, this is the one that can cover the whole spectrum. Not each piece, but you can pick a piece that hits that weight to strength ratio, clarity, whatever, that would fit for most styles of playing. And there's a lot of folklore about this, most of it erroneous. It's a beautiful Tonewood, and it's so pretty.
Beautiful.
And it's old. This came from way up high in our mountains. It would have fallen through natural causes because it was 300 or 400 years ago before anybody was cutting down trees, and tumbled into the river and got lodged in these glacial boulders for probably a few hundred years, because we could tell by the degradation in the end how long it had been. And then finally a crazy storm dislodged it several times, because it didn't just come loose and wash to the sea. It clogs again, hangs up here, there, and finally it went out to sea and then washed up on the beach.
Wow.
And this stuff is so protected that it took years to be able to access this and get to it. So I can't tell you how cool this is. Both the environment it comes from, the stories about it, and the tone of it is just exquisite. Now I'm going to say this because somebody may see this. This is a really nice, beautiful flame in this wood, and that's not a good thing for an acoustic guitar, because the way the grain goes, it's almost like perforations, and it can distort. But this is a really exceptional one in that this flame is really shallow, and it has great integrity. This direction, which again we can measure with what we do, and know it's safe to use.
Wow.
I wish we had time to go walk through the Redwoods.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, I would. That would be a great. Yeah, that's for the long documentary. That's for the,
well,
for the 3-part doc. Yeah,
let's
I'd love
do
to.
that. This is our fabled Brazilian rosewood, and I'm just going to tell the whole story, which you can edit as you wish. This, of course, comes from South America. It's beautiful. Under full spectrum sunlight, you can see chartreuse and violet, kind of the colors of antifreeze and transmission fluid. And this one has this gorgeous flame in it. And again, it's a really slaty, clear sound. So contrary to a lot of mythology, it doesn't have anything to do with EQ, bass, and treble. It has to do with that scale of clarity again, which you could easily mix up, right, with EQ. So this comes from trees that would have been cut probably 150 years ago. And they didn't have a chainsaw, so they couldn't cut it on the ground. They had to cut it here with a 2-person saw. So the whole remainder of that tree trunk, I carefully say tree trunk, was still there.
Wow.
We've been through it, but it was beautiful because it had those properties of aged wood. Rosewood isn't pretty in the living tree. It has to go through a process of this colorization. And so this was part of the actual tree trunk, not the knotty roots. And it's a beautiful thing.
Wow.
Responsibly harvested. That allows us to get the proper credentials to use it and export it.
And you literally use, on some of your guitars, ancient woods.
Yeah, that's
right.
That's right.
Like 1,000 years old.
Yes, worse.
or better. I mean,
yeah. Well, we got this. In this redwood sometimes can be incredibly old because bugs hate it. It doesn't decay, and if it's in the water, there's an anaerobic environment, very little oxygen, cold, deep water, so it's preserved. And we also had a sycamore that when a building was built downtown, they went 40 feet down for the foundation and the basement parking garage. They ran to the sycamore tree. That was 3,000 years old and intact. So that was our record.
Golly.
But then it got better. A good friend, Roman Zajacek, Rosewood guitars in the Czech Republic. We became good friends at the Frankfurt Music Messe. And I sent him a really pretty redwood top. And he sent me this oak that had been dug up in a sand mine near his shop. And it was carbon dated at 8,000 years old. And it was, people talk about bog oak. Now, this was in a sand mine, so it was dry. Where did sand come from in Eastern Europe?
Yeah.
I looked up on Wikipedia what was going on 8,000 years ago, and unfortunately they didn't write things down. But Mount Etna blew its stack, which in Greece and on the other side of the Mediterranean. And it's possible there was a tsunami that laid all this sand there and buried a forest. Cool.
Wow.
Okay, so we thought that's the record that'll never be beaten. But then we got involved in a project. And I'm careful to say charity's something you do when nobody's watching. So the story about this is another chapter. But we got this cowrie that had been buried in a cataclysm where the tectonic plates scratched across each other. That's the geological speculation, and also the oral history of the Maori. The Aboriginal people sound like this, and it created volcanoes, earthquake, tsunami, and buried this cowrie forest. And they're about as big as our sequoias. So over eons, this oozled its way up to the surface, like burying a tire tractor in a landfill. Eventually it'll come up top, and exposed it. And it's the province of the Maori as part of their spiritual iconography. And this stuff's carbon dated at 45,000 years old.
Whoa!
So
I
we're
don't know
done
if we're
setting
gonna beat
records.
that one.
We're done setting records. So really, how at what point does it reach its peak of polymerized resins and advantage? Certainly not 45,000 years. Maybe 500 years, whatever. But it's a beautiful story, and it's part of a really beautiful project to do, and it's irreplaceable. What price do you put on that? We just wait for the right cause.
Yeah.
Right? So we do use some really old wood, right? Most of this, like these spruces, like I said, that could go back 175 years, but most of it's cut and maybe 25, 50 years before it goes out, because they cut for violin guys.
Sure.
Or violin makers. That is really, they're very, very picky about it. And they just don't use new wood, which was one of the secrets of Stradivarius. They used old wood when they started.
Even back then.
Yeah, and it's a great advantage. So this thing about responsibility, doing the right thing, there's also a selfish reason. It's great. Right. And we use these to attract people's attention for the purpose of being able to explain to them the nature of the old woods are an alternative that you use because it's the right thing to do, but not quite as good. It's actually better.
So, Richard, at this point, do you find the wood or does it find you?
It's been a progression. At first, to find responsible wood, old wood, you had to go there.
Sure.
Right? Not only to find it, but to also vet the provenance of it.
Right.
But almost 50 years later, people know the story, and people come to us. Wood finds us.
Right.
And the idea is people have this precious stuff with a beautiful story. They don't want it to be used for furniture or a deck, right? They want it to go on as a legacy and be able to do something important like make music.
Right.
And this comes from the Bryn Athyn Cathedral in Bryn Athyn, Pennsylvania. And we got a call from their kind of overseer of the management of the place. This was built by European craftsmen back at the turn of the last century, and they save materials for everything to keep it going in perpetuity. Stonemasons, because gargoyles get eaten by acid rain, you want to make their faces fresh. Blacksmiths and woodworkers, and they saved the Brazilian rosewood, Indian rosewood, teak, mahogany that they used in the pews, paneling, and in some cases carvings. And what they realized was that it was, they do have to do gargoyles, they had to do rusty metal, but the wood inside was fine.
Sure.
And they had this real beautiful collection of woods that they wanted to see go to the right place.
And it had just been sitting in the basement for 100 plus years?
Perfect. It was this old stone building built in the European tradition of stone and mortar and real thick walls, so it's like a cave. A constant 55% Fahrenheit temperature and steady humidity. I mean, it couldn't have been better.
Right.
And
basically, like this room
yeah,
here.
except today it would probably cost about $10,000 a square foot
Yeah.
a building like
Yeah.
that. And when we drove up, it was a long negotiation. They wanted to sell it all, and then we settled all about $500,000, which is that's a showstopper, right?
Oh,
that's
yeah.
a deal buster.
Yeah, you'd have to rearrange a few things.
Yeah, we would.
Yeah.
So what I propose, I have a really good friend that's a pastor that's organized about 400,000 kids over his career to do nutrition, clean water projects, in the third world.
Great.
And we approached him with an idea that we could use this wood to build guitars for them to offer to patrons, auction. They could get their money, and we could get wood to use.
Oh, that's
right?
great.
And,
And their patrons could own a guitar made from the same wood
man, yeah, it's
as
beautiful.
the pews in their church. Oh,
Beautiful.
Yeah.
And they thought it was a wonderful idea, but they had to go to their admin and their money people who were like, what? What? Because they'd been offered probably $300,000 for this, and some of the biggest guitar companies had looked at it, but they didn't know what they were looking at.
Well, yeah, I imagine in Pennsylvania they go to Martin
They
first.
did, yeah, they did. And
Why would they pass on that?
since this is like secondhand, I kind of hate to say this for publicly, but I do understand that the Brazilian's complicated with provenance, certification, papers, and all that. And some companies go like, it's just not worth the bother.
Yeah.
And I think that was probably a big motivation for Martin. But they also weren't certain.
Yeah.
The wood was so old, it was like crusty and gray. It looks like concrete forms, And I've
Really?
had a lifetime with this. And anyway, finally, COVID happened. We went back. Finally, they said, look, this is a good idea, but why don't we just sell you what you want, right? And we just gotten economic injury disaster loan from SBA for COVID.
Sure.
Let's go.
Yeah.
So we went out there and made the arrangement. Beautiful relationship, and I'm sure ongoing we'll do some great stuff together.
That's
This
great.
is the Indian rosewood. I'll show you the Brazilian in a minute. That is, remember I said old wood, and especially an underserved natural ecosystem. Everything grows uniformly, steadily, and we get a tight grain, a density, and a coloration that doesn't happen once something's been cut or sunlight comes in, and it grows quickly, and it's different. You've maybe seen this in Adirondack spruce a lot, where there'll be really tight grain for a couple of inches, then really wide grain, and it'll go back into tight. And that's in the east, when we came in, Europeans, and ate everything up. So they cut the pines because it's more desirable than the Adirondack, exposing them to a lot of sunlight. So they grew really fast for 50 years with really wide rings, and then the pines grew back up and it slowed down again. So the uninterrupted natural forest is like the perfect place to hatch guitar wood. And you can see this, it's just so uniform and nice, and it's real heavy. So this is, blasphemous or not, this can sound a lot like Brazilian. Wow. Because you could find a modern Brazilian on the other end of the coin that grew really fast and was softer.
Sure.
So what a nice thing. This is part of our system, inventory system. Each piece of wood goes through the modal analysis. The story's written down, and then there's a little, barcode for it. So we don't have to come back here every time somebody wants a guitar and go through stacks of wood and mess everything up. We can do it online now.
Oh, that's great.
So beautiful stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I've got another pet one I want to show you here. This is Redwood, and it comes from the Klamath River up north near Oregon, California border. And this would have fallen, rolled into the river. It could have been cut, rolled into the river, washed on the bank, covered in mud, and waiting for us, right, to come find it.
For 100 years.
Yeah, well, actually, probably back to just after World War II.
Oh.
And the story was the big corporations had a stranglehold on access to lumber in the Northwest. Weyerhaeuser, Georgia Pacific, those companies. And there was families that have been doing it forever. They thought it was their birthright to have this stuff. And they called them Jippo loggers. And they're like a guerrilla warfare. They go and cut trees, get them out. And it was a huge battle for that. And it's memorialized in Ken Kesey's novel, Sometimes a Great Notion.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
Which a movie was made out of with Henry Fonda, Paul Newman, and Ned Beatty. And that's what we call this, the Great Notion wood.
Oh, okay.
And it, just because it's old and buried doesn't mean it's good, right? We have,
Right.
on top of that, we have to have this quality of integrity and resonance.
Oh, right.
This is really glassy. So remember I was telling you that the scale of redwood, the range is really broad. And this would make a really clear, articulate guitar that would respond really quickly. So think about this. If you were playing a finger style, which puts less energy in than a pick, so you get less volume. You're tuning, open tuning, that means some of the strings are down, less tension, less energy, less volume. And this wood would respond quicker and louder, the same amount of energy. So it's perfect for open tuning fingerstyle playing and really articulate. I think that's part of George Loudon's success in the Celtic realm. He used to use cedar, and now he uses redwood. And here's a great one. I told him who we buy from because you always get more than you give. When we turn a big company onto one of our dealers, it's not like the dealer won't sell to us. They're so grateful they make sure we're taken care of.
Oh.
Yeah, I turned Takamine on to Koa, which you're going to cut and veneer, but our Koa vendors so grateful we always got the good stuff.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah, so that's a fun story. Again, that's the modal analysis that, if I told you how to do this, you could figure out what kind of guitar this is best for, as I'll show you next, how thick to make it, thin to make it, and how to brace it and carve it.
Richard, you're always buying wood. You're always, so do you use all of it? I mean, what do you do with all of it?
Oh man, that's a great question. Well, I admitted I got a problem. I just
a
like
good
the
problem,
smell.
yeah.
Is that this is the tip of the iceberg. Real estate here, rental is like crazy expensive, so a lot of wood stored elsewhere. What we do is to get the best stuff, we want to go to the top of the food chain,
Sure.
Directly to the people. And to do that, we have to buy in quantity because they don't sell onesie-twos.
Yeah.
And with that, we get a lot of wood. We pick out the stuff that meets our criteria and quality, and we end up with a lot of wood that we have to do something with. Now, as a younger man, I used to look at this wood and go, oh, that's so beautiful. We can't use it now. I'll save it till later. Well, look at me, it's later. Right? Yeah. So what we do is we sell, and we sell to mostly other makers.
Oh.
We don't advertise it, and because some makers don't want just the association of another guitar company.
Sure.
But we sell to other makers and we sell to individuals, and it
So
helps
private
us.
luthiers can...
Yeah, it helps us support our habit, and anybody's welcome to contact us. We have. We have one of everything,
Yeah.
at least with that. And I don't mean to go pitch a commercial thing, but I want to share the wealth.
Right.
And it seems like the right thing to do. We all, as we age, we realize the silliness of hoarding or collecting,
Yeah.
like, come on. Why would I do that? So anyway, yeah, happy to talk to anybody about wood.
Oh, that's right. And
Yeah.
so some luthier wondering where to source can hit up Santa Cruz Guitar Company and dig into your cachet of goodies.
Right. But not only can they get a kind of wood and a cosmetic, they can get our modal analysis.
Wow, that's huge.
Somebody can get the right piece to build, let's say, here's a quick one, to build a traditional Dreadnought, which is different than a contemporary. The tradition was one microphone, and the drums were, the guitar is more like the drums, held down the rhythm. When people like Dan Crary, Doc Watson, Norman Blake, Tony Rice brought it up front to do the leads, you needed something different. Instead of a warm, round tone, you needed something clear, articulate to accentuate those single line leads. So that'd be two different pieces of wood for the top. And that's why Adirondack is so favored today, because it has that clarity, articulate tone that you can use for stuff. So anyway, we can do that too.
Okay, that's amazing. So if somebody wants to build
game changing
Tony Rice's, get that Dreadnought bottom end, you'll tell them the secret sauce.
Well, we will. And we can not only analyze the individual piece of wood and say how to process it, but we can reverse engineer. I mean, really the dream of science, what are the secrets of Stradivarius? We can analyze an existing guitar and have the data to know how to achieve that.
Oh,
right?
God, what a great resource.
Yeah. One of the things we love about old guitars, they sound better, they're more resonant, and you just learn that old wood is a big part of that secret.
So you are essentially a custom shop.
Absolutely.
So the process starts with selecting the wood for what the player wants, and let's go from there.
Great, and it's a really good thing to do that. You know, when I give somebody a tour here, I give them way more information than they need. And but if I did that when somebody was going to buy a guitar and give them all these choices, they get a headache. They go buy a Taylor because it's easier, right?
Yeah, right.
To get people what they want, I'm going to listen carefully to what they play, what they think they like, but I'm also going to see what they play, who their musical influences are, and what guitar do they have now or a friend has that they love something, they'd like to change something. And with 55 years of practice and my foundation in the violin tradition, I can do it. And I can be sure I get what they want. So let's start with wood. Remember I said wood is the scale of clarity. If you had, I use the analogy, you had 10 little bells made out of metal, they all rang at the same volume and frequency, but the one on this end is silver and the one on this end is bronze. That's the difference in tone, right? Another one is if you play your guitar and you move close to the bridge, you same note, same volume, but it gets brighter and clearer, and you move the other direction, warmer, rounder. So from what I discussed with them, I know what they need, but they may have an idea based on, experts on the internet about what they should have, and I'm going to try to accommodate them, because here's another cool inside story. The name of the wood doesn't guarantee anything, right? Because there's going to be a scale of density, and I can find a piece of old Indian that'll sound more like Brazilian than a modern piece of Brazilian, right? So we can often accommodate somebody for their choices of wood, even though in the general internet discussion, it wouldn't sound, it wouldn't be described as appropriate. So with that, all of these woods, both top and back, they don't contribute to EQ, and that's a huge statement to make. People eat me alive on the internet. Brazilian rosewood is not more bassy, right? It's the scale of tone, and a lot of other factors are making it bassy, but the Brazilian will definitely do that scale of clarity. And people mix up tone and EQ all the time, right? So in these woods, it's a spice rack. In a kitchen, we can build the thing that somebody wants, right? And it takes communication. Now, all guitars sound great. Ours happen to sound exceptional. Nobody's going to be disappointed, but we can nail all those personal preferences along with the shape of the neck, the color, all that. So wood is really critical in that if you're doing everything else right.
Right.
Makes sense? if you're building a guitar for a price target, these things would be less of a factor.
Sure.
Yeah. Got a headache yet?
No, no. This is I'm excited about it.
Yeah. Oh, it's fun. And in that sense, we started out as custom builders. You know, I built on my own for years, and then, as I said, I took on 2 partners. And the idea was to do what people needed and wanted. When the big breakthrough is we were unknown. There was no internet yet, and we couldn't afford advertising. And after selling to our friends and their friends, now what?
Yeah.
Right? And the wonderful thing that happened to us is, you know, Darrell Anger, the famous violinist who I made mandolins with, joined the Grisman Quintet, met Tony, brought him down, and Tony Rice was huge influence and gave us credibility. In the same year, Eric Clapton wrote us a letter because he'd seen a guitar in a magazine and wanted one. So now, before we could have, somebody could have played a Santa Cruz and gone, this is the best guitar I've ever heard. But what would my friends think if I didn't buy a Martin, right? And they go for the safe one. So with this, all of a sudden we had credibility.
Right.
And now let me take this one step further. As a custom shop, we were launching a new brand, a new idea. Boutique guitar making didn't exist. Gibson, Martin made guitars, not humans. So it's a big battle going forward. So we had to survive. We had to make standard models. We had to make Indian Rosewood, Sitka Spruce, Dreadnought, and later on an OM. We're one of the first builders to do an OM because when I was a kid, everybody had to have a Dreadnought.
Sure.
Right? An OM was for a maiden aunt or a retired music teacher. So we always did the custom, but we had to do these standard models. We had to do that for years before we could finally have the credibility and the respect to come into our own. Because think of somebody spending thousands of dollars on a guitar, it had everything they want, but what if they get a bad one?
Right.
And we still try to overcome that because that's really true of most brands that build random frequencies. By controlling the frequencies, we can guarantee the good sound and everything else.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I went into promotional mode there.
No, I love it. No, you're right. The resonance is everything. The sound, yeah.
And as I'm alluding to, if your time allows, let's look at that. I'll show you. This is the kind of thing that would be somebody's intellectual property, you know, like the secrets of Stradivarius, but most people don't want to take the time to do it. I'll show you. Let me give a quick credit. I was talking about this modal analysis that we do, and this is like a 20-year cooperation with Stanford University's acoustic physics project, which is astounding. They're the ones that developed the Yamaha DX7, the original, you know, today we have like great keyboards. They started out with mallets and went up. They got all the first of everything that was electronic for music. And also the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey that has a really incredible physics department. They have tools we never dreamed of owning. And they have the knowledge and they can stand math, which I can't, right? So what they do the same thing we do, which is they want to study resonance in a chamber. In their case, they want to make sure a rocket to the moon doesn't shake apart, or a Scud missile, or whatever, and we're able to work in cooperation with them, simply because everybody loves guitars.
Yeah.
We could never pay for this, right? Again, another goodwill thing.
Yeah.
Okay, doke, let's have some fun.
Okay,
Yeah.
sounds great.
Forrest just set this on these little foam things. They're like the handle of a bell, so it'll resonate freely. And he attached a little connector to capture the properties of this wood. Not qualities, mind you. And this little hammer here is going to tap it 5 times, equal force, and we're going to take that average. Right, it's just good science. It should be all the same. We're going to take the average of that. And through the processing here, go ahead. Now we're going to photograph this. We're going to weigh it. take the dimensions of it, and right now he's capturing the thickness in what was this, tenths of a millimeter, or even more accurate, maybe.
About that, yeah.
Yeah, more accurate.
So, I mean, how did this machine, you didn't like go to Home Depot and buy this. Did you have to invent this machine?
So, yeah, we did. It's, to do this, you would want a laser vibrometer that can take laser readings and then through your processor get all those things I was telling you there. And this is, this has the density of the wood, and then the all of these things that I would measure, it'll give you that, and then it has what's called the radiant coefficient, and it's really strength to weight ratio that gives you that scale of bright, clear, articulate to warm, dark, and blended, and then the bass, treble, mid-range propensity of it, so you can know how to work it, and then a bunch of other stuff that just give you a headache.
That's amazing. Takes the guesswork out of it.
Yeah. So let credit where it's due. I have a dear friend, Mark Rao. He just got hired by MIT to be a professor there, which means we still have access to him. He's actually from Nova Scotia, but he's the one that worked with Stanford University and got us the in there. We made a guitar for him, and guitars are just such a remarkable unit of exchange. You know, like we can make guitars for any professional and, you know, get a trade. So Mark really latched on to us, and there's something in it for him too. So he decided to write his master's thesis on this. And with that, we got access to everything in the world. Also, we turned over our intellectual property on this to Stanford and the military, but that's what we do anyway.
Sure.
You know? So it's an awesome thing. Now, one of my goals was to be able to teach this, and Forrest is a good example. He's a successor on this. And the other one is, one of my dreams is to be able to allow people to make really cheap guitars that sound really good and play well. Those are the two things that put most people off music. It's not interesting or inspiring, or it hurts.
Right.
Right. So we're on that track, and this is a really good way to go. So I'm thrilled. So anyway, this will print out a sticker with these properties. We also capture it because we have to collect a lot of data and do a lot of a comparison before we can reverse engineer another guitar. Also, this is going to give us the info and data to decide how thick to make this, to decide how dense and thick the braces are, and how to carve them to get the guitar in tune, the things we do by ear.